An expert in Vanuatu politics says the country's proposed constitutional amendments will only partly address the chronic political instability they're being brought in to curb. The legislation, which has been passed by Parliament and approved in a national referendum, just needs to be gazetted to come into effect. 17A states if an MP leaves a political party or is ejected from a party, their seat is automatically vacated. And 17B effectively removes independent MPs and single MP parties from Parliament. Pacific Hub project lead at Griffith Asia Institute, Tess Newton-Kane, says what the laws do not address is the fractured nature of Vanuatu politics. She spoke with Koroi Hawkins, who began by asking her what she thought of the referendum result.
Yeah, I mean, obviously both of the questions were voted for in the affirmative, and they were solid majorities, about 59% for 17A, 57% for 17B. So they were clear majorities. We weren't looking at kind of like 52-48 or anything like that, like we've seen in other places. But obviously there were patches of stronger sentiment. As you say, some islands voted very much, overwhelmingly in support of some things, and other islands voted overwhelmingly against one or other of the questions. So definitely a range of responses across the voting public as a whole.
What happens now?
So obviously the first thing that happens is that the legislation that was passed at the end of last year needs to be gazetted in order to bring it into force. And that will be, that's usually that is a function of the Prime Minister. Will request that legislation be gazetted. I can't see any reason why there would need to be a particular delay around that. And then that brings up, that sort of gives effect to the constitutional amendment. 17A, in theory, I guess, can start applying straight away as soon as that legislation's gazetted, although there'll probably be something of a transition period while the political parties get themselves organised so that they are in compliance with the legislation governing registration of political parties and what needs to be in place for their kind of architecture and governance. 17B, which is the one that says that if you're elected as an independent, you have to align with the party within 3 months or your seat is vacated. My understanding, or kind of my Bush lawyer's interpretation of that, is that it won't apply until after the next elections, which are scheduled for 2026. I also think it's quite possible that one may find itself subject to one or more constitutional challenges in the courts. It's quite a serious constraint on the overall suffrage in Vanuatu, that you can't sit as an independent MP in the Parliament, that you are constrained, that you are somehow going to be coerced into joining a political party or aligning with a political party, even if you have severe, significant policy differences and there isn't a party with whom you feel your policy positions align. Is the kind of like the theoretical constraint there. And I don't know of any other country that says you can't sit as an independent, any other democratic country. I certainly don't know of one in the Pacific that says that.
On the intended impact of this whole exercise is to reduce the political instability that we've seen quite pronounced in recent years with the multiple changes in leadership. Is it going to have that effect in your view?
I think it goes some way to addressing that issue. Obviously, I think, if you look at currently in the Vanuatu Parliament, there are 9 people who sit. 1 sits as an independent, and the 8 sit as micro parties, so parties that only have 1 member. So, if we kind of assume that they will, as things currently stand, they can hold quite a significant sway in a parliament of only 52. We should expect that to change over time, given these changes. And obviously, it means that we won't have what we've seen before, where we've got members supposedly of the same party but sitting on different sides of the house. That will not be in a position, and that will go some way to making coalitions a little bit stronger. But I don't know that it necessarily goes a long way to removing a fractured parliament that means that we're always relying on coalition government. So that would kind of be something that aims at that, something that takes aim at that will probably have a bigger impact on political stability. So I think it's going to have some effect, but it's largely tinkering at the edges with the machinery rather than addressing some of the core issues.
And these core issues, I guess, relate to the caliber of leadership, right? And the I'm not sure what the right word is, but if the human beings are going to be moving around, they will find a way to manipulate any system, right? In terms of Melanesian politics.
That's right. So it's kind of I think there's a couple of things. One is around the way the electoral system is set up and the use of multi-member seats, which actually disincentivizes parties, like people staying in large parties and trying to have like national campaigns. The multi-member seat system actually kind of creates a bit of a driver towards this fractured nature of the parliament. But I think even more fundamental than that is your point, Karoy, which is you've got, rather than worrying about what the machine does, you've got to look at what the raw product is that's going into the machine. And how can the entire kind of bedrock of citizenship and civic education and understanding of the democratic bargain, how can that be built up and developed so that the people that are going into this machine are the ones that have the right sort of vision for Vanuatu and can be trusted to take on real leadership that's about national betterment rather than what we see at the moment, which is very typical in Melanesia, which is more about resource gathering and redistribution.